Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and happy New Year's Eve to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well this morning. Hoping that many of you are less sleep deprived than what I am, and we're not even into the new holiday yet. Uh, but here we go. Big game for the New Orleans Saints. I'm thankful and grateful all of you guys were able to tune in for the Bayou Blitz pregame show. I am one of your co-hosts, Bob Rose, and joining me is Brendan Boylan, my friend and other co-host. Happy early New Year to you, Brendan.
Yeah, happy New Year's Eve, happy early New Year. Hopefully you Christmas holiday, and I'm sure some of you guys are looking at the calendar going, dang, I really got to go back to work that soon. I'm in that boat. I'm definitely in that boat. But yeah, big game for the Saints, do or die. Plain and simple, right, Bob? If the Saints don't win today, they're mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. So
Yep.
big one for the Saints. But before we get into that, opening up with some news that was reported by Ian Rappaport this morning. And here's the quote that was provided and shared by our very own John Hendricks from the report. The quote says, quote, there may be changes coming to New Orleans. The offensive side of the ball will get a thorough examination following 2023. But those decisions for Allen and the Saints will be made in the coming months, with all indications as of now that he will get a third season. Bob, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have a whole offseason to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Black Monday comes around and we don't have to really have much of a conversation about it. But initial thoughts, comments, concerns, other words that make sense for that. Not too explicit on the report that Allen looks to be getting a third season in New Orleans.
I take it with a grain of salt, Brendan, and folks, you should too. Ian Rappaport, he he does a lot of extensive work throughout the NFL. Therefore, Ian doesn't have his finger on the pulse of any one team or anything like that. But I'd like to point out too that Nick Underhill alluded to that same topic himself in his writings and video work earlier this week. I think it's too early to say for sure what's going to happen with Dennis Allen. I think these last two games will tell the tale, not necessarily whether the Saints go to the playoffs or not, which, like you said, we'll get into those mathematical possibilities in a minute, but just how the team finishes. They finish against two division rivals, two teams that beat them handily earlier this season, and two teams that are along with the Saints in the playoff chase. So are the Saints going to close out playing some actual good football against semi-decent teams for a change? I don't think you can judge Dennis Allen's job for next year until we see how that plays out. My hunch, and I don't have any specific sources other than just my gut, my hunch is that Allen's job security is probably 50-50 at this point, with the team probably leaning towards bringing him back because we all know how ownership and Mickey Loomis feels about loyalty, and Dennis Allen has certainly given that to this franchise. And like I said, that's why in my opinion it's 50-50, and maybe they're leaning towards giving him a third season, but I think any concrete reports out there saying that Dennis Allen will be back for a third year are a bit careless at this point. Just my opinion.
I said this, and you've said it throughout the season too, is you look back through Saints history and tell me a coach that didn't get a third season.
There's only been one. Well, two, but none since Tom Benson bought the team in 1986.
Right, and with that, that's where my mindset goes. Is he might not make it through year 3, but I have very, if you wanted to play a game of like high probability, medium probability, low probability going into the next season, I would say my vote for high probability is Dennis Allen returning, right? Low probability may be Pete Carmichael returning. And that was the other part of that report as well, is that, the offense is going to go through a thorough review, which frankly, I hate when reports say things like that.
Yeah.
Go through, like, it's almost like well, duh, like your whole team goes through a thorough review, especially when you don't make the playoffs. Um, so I would say high probability Dennis Allen comes back, low probability that Pete Carmichael comes back. That's kind of what the report alluded to as well. But to echo what Bob said, nothing's concrete, you know. And they said even in that report, I mean, just to pull up the quote verbatim one more time, was it was as of now Dennis Allen's expected. You know, things can change, and if the Saints play like absolute crap today and next week, we could be having a completely different conversation. Like if the
Yeah.
Saints get completely blown out, the doors blown off of them today and next week, we're having a different conversation come the end of the season. But let's jump into this week against the Bucs. It feels like a lifetime ago when these two teams first met. Um, very early in the season, what, week 4 or the
Mhm.
fourth game for the New Orleans Saints, week 4 of the season. The Saints lose to Tampa Bay pretty handedly. And at that point, Bob, we were starting to have conversations about this Buccaneers offense and how Baker Mayfield was starting to have um, some life injected back into him and his arm and his legs, and it was looking like the Baker Mayfield of old that led the Browns to the playoffs. This is a pretty healthy unit, Bob, for the most part. Um, Rashid White's having a good year. On Wednesday, we talked about how Mike Evans at this point of his career is still flourishing, scoring a lot of touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. It's going to make some Saints fans sick to hear it, but I call them a future Hall of Famer on Wednesday, just based off the numbers alone. Wow, this is a Saints defense that has looked their age. That might be just a fair way to put it. They've definitely looked their age this year. Lack of a pass rush. We have gone in depth and in detail this year on how this team struggles with mobile quarterbacks or quarterbacks that can move and escape the pocket. And I wouldn't call Baker Mayfield a Lamar Jackson, but Baker Mayfield can certainly get it done with his legs. When you're watching the game film this week and you're evaluating all the things that Tampa Bay does particularly well on the offensive side of the football, what worries you um, about this matchup for the New Orleans Saints defense, and how can the Saints combat the Tampa Bay offense that right now is clicking on all cylinders? Yeah, well, and that's something we haven't talked a whole lot about is Alontae Taylor and his benching. He's going to be inserted back in the starting lineup this week. A tough week for him. A tough week, like you said, for the entire secondary. Let's flip it to the Saints offense. I mean, it's something we've talked about all year long. The struggles of this Saints offense. This is still a Bucs defense that has pieces of the DNA that won them a Super Bowl a few years ago. Though they might not be as intimidating as they once were, Vita Vea is still a rock in the middle. You called Winfield maybe the best safety in football. Carlton Davis is a cornerback you can't bat your eyes at. Levante David, even his age, still moves just as well as any linebacker in football. Before I let you answer this question, I'm hearing a little feedback. I don't know if it's you or me. It sound a little robotic-y. Might be matching your mood, your sleep-deprived mood. Let's do this, Bob. If you want to back out real quick and come back in, and we'll keep rolling. But yeah, no, guys, this is a Tampa Bay defense that, like I said, it still has a lot of DNA from that team that won a Super Bowl just a few years ago. And this is a defense that, frankly, has been playing pretty good football. You look over their last 4 games, this 4-game winning streak, the defense is only giving up about 20 points per game. And you say, well, Brendan, that's not great. That's not, top 10 level defense. But, I mean, look at New Orleans as an example, as a team that we've said for years, if this is a team that could only allow 20 points per game, we would be having a completely different conversation about some of those struggles during the mid 2010s for the New Orleans Saints. So this is a Tampa defense that is starting to turn it around a little bit. The offense, like Bob alluded to, playing well, running the football well, averaging over 30 points per game as we welcome Bob back. Bob, like I said, this is a defense over their last 4 games, this 4-game winning streak. They're only surrendering about 20 points per game, somewhere in that ballpark. I was just saying that might not come across as like a top 10 defense or an elite defense. But when your offense is putting up 30 plus a game, the math works out if you're only allowing 20 against some decent football teams as well. So the Saints offensively, where do you see this team having some struggles against, I named a player from every level, Vita Vea, Levante David, Antoine Whitfield Jr., guys that are playmakers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where do you see the Saints struggling?
The interior of the offensive line, where they have struggled all year, almost without exception. First of all, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be without edge rusher Shaq Barrett and cornerback Carlton Davis today. Now, they do have very good depth, in my opinion, at the edge. Cornerback is a little bit more questionable, especially for a Tampa Bay pass defense that's dead last in the National Football League. So I think that Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and those other pass catchers are going to be able to exploit Tampa Bay coverage if you can keep Derek Carr upright. That's a big if, especially with Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and James Hurst playing so poorly in the middle. This group, and you're talking about a number 1 draft choice, a number 2, a second-round draft choice, and an accomplished veteran, just not being able to get any push in the running game and being most times absolute human turnstiles for interior pass rushers. And you mentioned Vita Vea, before I had to step out and step back in. Also, Kalijah Cansey, their first-round draft choice. He's playing much better of late. Tampa Bay is going to bring inside pressure, not to mention the blitzes from inside linebackers, Levante David and Devin White. And we saw that strategy be very effective against against New Orleans pass protection back in week 4. There's no reason to believe that that's not going to change now, especially with Landon Young playing in place of the now on injured reserve Ryan Ramczyk out at right tackle. Are they going to slide Ruiz over to help double team the edge, and step a running back up, to provide extra pass protection? Are they going to leave a tight end in? I don't know how the Saints are going to handle this, but however they have handled inside stunts, inside twists, all year long has been absolutely laughable. And it's what's gotten Derek Carr nearly killed and just sent this entire offense off rhythm. So that is the biggest problem area I see for the New Orleans Saints, the offensive line in general, but the interior offensive line very, very specifically.
Well, and that's been a talking point all season long. And this is going to be an interesting question for you. And I don't know if I have a yes or no answer to it, or even an in-depth answer. So that's why it's getting sent over to you, Bob, the more intelligent of the two of us, Bob Rush. You referenced week 4 and the troubles the Saints had in week 4. Why should Tampa Bay believe that those issues still don't exist? Because they do exist on tape. In your heart of hearts, or in what you've seen on film this year, are the Saints a better team today than they were back in week 4?
No, absolutely not. In fact, they're worse, markedly worse. I know the offense has been a little bit more efficient in recent weeks, but if you're asking me about the team in general, offense, defense, special teams, coaching, I believe that this entire team is much worse. Mainly because coming into week 4 against Tampa Bay earlier this year, you had to believe that the Saints had a little bit of confidence rolling. They've won 2 of their first 3 games. The only loss being a last-second missed field goal at Green Bay. And knowing that they hadn't even played their best football at that point, or so we thought. As the season progressed, we realized that this is exactly who this team is. Struggles in the red zone, getting absolutely manhandled at the line of scrimmage, and now you sprinkle in defensive breakdowns on a consistent basis over the last half of the year. Yes, this Saints team as a whole, I believe, is much worse than the one that we saw back in week 4.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. I think we've been a little bit of a repeating record player this year in terms of what can the Saints do offensively to, combat this and combat that. And that's been a lot of our pregame shows this year, Bob. Let's just be honest with people, because, Pete Carmichael has been unwilling to change a lot of things. There was one game where they motioned the heck out of pre-snap reads, and that was it. It was like, all right, we had 1 week where Pete Carmichael remembered you could motion a player, a receiver, what have you. But Alvin Kamara was questionable coming into the game with an illness. He's going to go from what we've seen and what we were hearing throughout the week. Do you have any concerns about his availability, how many snaps he's going to get? Because this is a guy that has been, in both of our opinions, extremely underutilized this season for his skill set. Now you're talking about a guy who's a little under the weather, a must-win game for New Orleans to stay in the playoff hunt. You have any concerns about his availability? And if so, who do the Saints turn to? Because Kendre Miller's out for yet another week.
Yeah, Kendre Miller is out, and because of that, they don't really have any back, that brings even close to the type of skill set that Alvin Kamara does. And few NFL teams have that to begin with. So yeah, I'm absolutely concerned about not necessarily his availability, but his ability to hold up during the course of the game. How many touches is he good for? Is hydration going to be an issue? Are his legs under him? That kind of thing. Because we have all seen that this Saints offense is a much different beast when they get Alvin Kamara involved as a pass catcher early on. And the Tampa Bay linebacking core, because of their speed, presents a big enough challenge. Is Kamara going to be close enough to 100% to be able to be effective? Because I think that's a key to to at least cutting down on the inside blitzes from David and White. Up the face of Carr. If you can move Kamara out of the backfield, and establish him as a pass catching threat early, then at least one of those linebackers have got to go with him. So I think the health of Alvin Kamara is very much a big key to this game.
Let's play a little daughter drop as we go into a game of this magnitude for New Orleans. Daughter drop, Bob. Going back to week 4, the Saints offense did not find the end zone. Daughter drop, the Saints find the end zone multiple times against Tampa Bay today.
Drop, because just
because.
Just because this is the 2023-24 New Orleans Saints, and they've not been able to do that consistently. As I said, over the last handful of weeks, they've had more, but a lot of times it's been after they've fallen behind, and defenses soften up a little bit. Even if Tampa Bay gets up on New Orleans by a few scores early on, this is a rivalry. Granted, it's not the same level as a Falcons Saints or even as a Panthers Saints, but it's a rivalry nonetheless. These individual players do not like each other. We see that. We've seen that for the last 3 or 4 years now. So I can't. If Tampa Bay gets up a few scores, I can't see them letting up. Not with how much this team is on a roll, and with Kamara's health in doubt. Questions along the offensive line, and Carr's just overall inconsistency all year long. I have a hard time seeing the New Orleans Saints reaching the end zone multiple times.
Well, just to throw Jimmy Gumbo's comment up.
Sorry, Jimmy Gumbo, but Happy New Year. Let's try not to let the Saints. They might kick us in the ass on the way out of 2023. I'm not going to let them ruin my 2024. I'm not.
Well, at least for the first however many months.
Right.
First 8 months, they got nothing. All right, throw it back to me, Bob.
All right. Daughter drop, Cam Jordan, who has had a good career, very good career against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers statistically. Cam Jordan finally shows up in what could be one of his last NFL games and has multiple sacks of Baker Mayfield. Daughter drop.
The Saints defense has had moments where the pass rush has come alive, particularly against the Giants a few weeks ago. But that was one of the worst offensive lines in football, if not the worst offensive line in football. And this pass rush has been a major concern all season long. No Peyton Turner today. That shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, but you've swung and missed on these draft picks, Davenport, now Turner, whether that's fair to him or not. He's only played like 14 games in 3 years for Peyton Turner. Fair to him or not, he's going to be evaluated on what he's shown on the field, and he hasn't been on it.
As our Kyle Mosley always likes to say, the best ability is availability.
That's right. And I mean, guys have had moments. Passanio's had moments, but no, and I don't think it's all Cam Jordan. Obviously, we're seeing a decline in Cameron Jordan, but I don't think it's all on him. I mean, he gets all the attention because there's no one else to give attention to. So no, I don't see Cam getting multiple sacks. He might get one. Be nice to see him get one. He's only got 2 on the season. It would be nice to see it, but no, I don't think. I think the Saints will struggle to put Baker on the ground as a whole, let alone just singling out one player. Daughter drop, Bob. If this is a game that New Orleans ultimately loses, it will be because of the offense's inability to move the football, not the offense's inability to put the ball in the red zone, a little bit opposite of what we've seen so far this year.
I'm going to go dot here because even without Shaq Barrett, even without Carlton Davis, if I'm on the Tampa Bay side, I really like my matchup across the board against this New Orleans offense. Again, if Carr has time, I can see both Olave and Shaheed having big days against porous Tampa Bay coverage. But the way Tampa Bay is able to rush the passer, where their strengths lie up there is where New Orleans is weakest. They're weak across the board, but or across the front, but they're weakest where Tampa Bay is the strongest as far as pass rushing and stopping the run. So I see the Saints having a difficult time just moving the football in general. Dot or drop. As we mentioned, there will be no Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans, but my dot or drop is Paulson Adebo will step in for the role that Lattimore usually plays, shadowing Mike Evans mostly all over the field, and the result will be similar to what we've seen when Lattimore has taken on Evans. In other words, he keeps him contained, maybe even shuts him down.
I'm going to drop it. Evans has played really well this year, and it's no disrespect to Paulson Adebo. But I think some of the successes that we've seen from Lattimore and Evans comes because they don't like each other, because Lattimore gets into his head.
Mm-hmm.
Evans has had one game, I think, where he got the better of Lattimore, but for the most part, it's been a Lattimore heavy and dominated rivalry inside of a rivalry. I don't think you get that same from Paulson Adebo, and I don't think it's because Paulson's not a competitor. I don't think it's because of anything with Paulson Adebo. It's just not the same. It's not the same rivalry. Evans is not going to have someone across that's going to get in his head the same way and push the buttons, right? Like, everybody who has siblings knows the older sibling knows how to push the younger brother's siblings, or whatever, right? I did that to my brother. It's different, right? It would be like just flip-flopping and being like, oh, okay, well, this random person or the friend of whoever is going to bother the little brother the same way. It's not the same. That's what it's going to be like. And I see Evans getting in the end zone multiple times today, especially with Lattimore out. Last dot or drop before we let the people go. Bob, dot or drop? This is the final game of 2023 that we see Derek Carr at quarterback for the Saints.
Drop.
Because 24, you got what I meant. Because the next,
in other words, Derek Carr is not going to play next week against the Atlanta Falcons. No, I will drop it mainly because Dennis Allen seems determined that Derek Carr is his Titanic, and we all know what happened to the Titanic. One of the reasons that happened to the Titanic is, despite ice warnings, they actually increased speed as they entered the ice field. Basically blinded because they were in the dark. They had no binocular, et cetera, et cetera. Do your history, folks. This isn't a podcast about that. Derek Carr is Dennis Allen's Titanic, and the two of them seem destined to go down together. Be it this season and during the off season or into next season. So I think win, lose, or draw, Derek Carr is going to be healthy, of course, if he's healthy. The Dennis Allen is riding Derek Carr to the very end.
Man, I wanted things to get weird. I wanted some Jake Haener action.
Same.
If Tampa wins today, I would love to see Jake Haener the final week of the season, just because why not?
Yeah. My last dot or drop. Oh, let's see. Where do I go with this? We'll stay with Derek Carr. Derek Carr will have over 300 yards passing, along with. Hey, listen. Tampa Bay has given up 7 300-yard passers this year and 10 100-yard receiving games. So the numbers are there. So Derek, okay, I'll back off a little bit. Derek Carr will have at least 270 yards passing, and either Chris Olave or Rashid Shaheed will have a 100-yard day.
I'll dot it, and mostly because if you look at the numbers, last week's a great example. Carr threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He pissed a lot of people off in fantasy.
Yeah.
But it's gonna if that happens, and I think it will happen, it's because the Saints get down and they just start chucking it, and the numbers look a lot better than the actual game. Like, numbers do lie. Like, I've always hated that. Numbers don't lie. Like, yes, numbers do absolutely lie. Film is the only thing that doesn't lie. That's another thing we could put on a hat or a T-shirt. Numbers do lie. Film doesn't. But yeah, no, I'll dot it just because of that. All right, Bob. Final score predictions for today.
I think it's ironic that back in 2020, Dennis Allen took over for a COVID sidelined Sean Payton in a Monday night game against Tom Brady and Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints won that game 9-0. And I got to believe that was one of the cementing factors in why Dennis Allen became the replacement for Sean Payton after Sean quit. Now I believe it's ironic that the same franchise, the same venue could be the downfall of Dennis Allen. And as I wrote about earlier, why shouldn't we think it would be any different? The Saints are awful against teams with 500 or better records when they play them. Tampa Bay is 8-7. The Saints are awful against an awful NFC South under Dennis Allen, 4-6. And the Saints have an opportunity to, I'm not going to say control their own playoff fate, but certainly set themselves up for a better mathematical chance for the playoffs than a lot of people realize going into next week's game. And anytime that's happened in the last 2 years, the Saints have fallen flat on their face. Poor coaching, bad play calling, poor execution, poor motivation. I believe it's going to be the same today. I think Tampa Bay has the potential to roll in this one. Again, I do not like the matchups on either side of the football. And I think Baker Mayfield is the hot hand right now. And I agree with you. I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both have big enough days, to put points on the board, too many points on the board for a Saints offense that I expect to be overmatched. I'm going Tampa Bay 31, New Orleans 13.
We're not far off. Typically we're not, which has been weird this year. We've been really close. For all the reasons Bob just mentioned, the fact that the Saints offense can't get anything going until it's far too late. The one thing that the Saints may have going for them, it's a divisional matchup. And look at the 2 divisional matchups that the Bucs played in their 4-game win streak against Atlanta and Carolina. They were close games too.
Yep.
But this Saints team is bad, and they're facing the second hottest team in football. I put the Bucs right behind the Rams, and you saw what the Rams did to the Saints. I have the Bucs in this one, 28-14. No field goals. Forget the kickers. Your fantasy championships will be ruined because nobody will attempt field goals today. Moo-ha-ha-ha. But Bob, our last show of the of 2023. So we hope all of you guys have a safe ringing in of the new year, and we hope to see you on Wednesday the 3rd. For the Bayou Blitz podcast, win or lose. But Bob, where can everybody keep up with you and all of your work with the Saints News Network, as we could be going into a really pivotal week 18? The Saints are still alive, or we can going into a pivotal week 18 where everybody's ready to burn the ship down.
Yeah, let the chaos fly if they lose today, but we'll cover that one if that happens on Wednesday's show. In the meantime, thank you, folks, for tuning in to the Bayou Blitz pregame show today. I know I speak on behalf of Brendan. When I throw out Happy New Year's to all of you and all of your families, and please, if you go out on the roads, even starting this afternoon, be safe, be very careful, and if you drink or anything, if you party, do so responsibly, please. And on that note, you can follow me on Facebook, Bob Rose. I'm over on Twitter at BobbyR2613, and follow my work along with that of Kyle Mosley, John Hendricks, and Ross Jackson at the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, or the SI.com team page. And last but certainly not least, continue to support and promote your Bayou Blitz Facebook group and your Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. You all have done such a great job of that. We can't thank you enough for what you guys do to us, for us rather. Not only tuning into our show, interacting with us, commenting on pieces, but just I'm seeing more and more people promote the Bayou Blitz on your regular social media pages. So please keep doing that. Pull in Saints fans, pull in football fans, because it's fun to have football debates, especially with fellow NFC South people. Just as we always do in our groups, keep it clean. Y'all have done a great job of that too. And just keep it up into 2024. Make this thing a powerhouse, because this is your show. We're here for you. All we are is your mouthpieces.
For myself, you can follow me everywhere at BT Boylan. As Bob said, on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, it's at Bayou Blitz Pod. Bayou Blitz group still at 1.9K. So, guys, we only have 12 hours to get us to 2,000 in 2023. But we really appreciate all of your support. I echo what Bob said. If you guys do go out, party, even if you're not party, you're just going out, be on the roads. Everybody just be safe, be responsible, do the smart things today, and know that it's not always you. Right? That's what my parents used to say to me all the time. We're not worried about you on the road. We're worried about other people on the road. So just be mindful, be safe, be careful. And we cannot wait to see you in the new year. Hopefully after a New Orleans Saints victory. Bob and I are both predicting that won't happen. But hey, we've been wrong before. We hope you guys have a very happy new year. Bob, my friend, happy new year to you. And Will and Lauren, hopefully you guys have a good night. In what I'm assuming is a cold Pennsylvania night sky. It's cold. It's a little cold here. I'm a little bit of a wimp, though. You guys have pointed it out before. But Bob, I hope you guys have a happy new year. Happy new year to all of you guys. And we'll see what the Saints have in store for us here in the next 50 minutes or so.
Brendan, happy new year to you, Katie, and your family, my friend. I hope you have a great evening. And let's all of us start off 2024 on a positive note and just carry that positivity and strength through the entire new year.
Hey, amen. Nothing better than that, Bob. We will see you all in 2024. Till then, who dat?